I had an email list on MailChimp at the time. And a lot of people came to me for help with MailChimp stuff. So I basically wanted to make a training to help people get started with MailChimp. I called it Get Comfy with the Monkey, which the name is
Nice.
still so good, which I need to reuse it for something because like every time I say it, I'm like, oh, that was just such good naming on my part. Um,
Bravo.
but it was like a 5 day challenge basically to set up your email list and set up your like the gift that people get when you get subscribers to your email list. So that is probably when I set that up as my opt-in gift, right? So when people subscribe to my email list, they receive this course. That's probably when I got my most subscribers. And by most subscribers, I'm talking like 200, right?
Hmm.
So and my email list kind of stayed around that number for a long time. So along in there, I also had changes in my actual job life, right? So I got laid off in there. I started a new job in there. I quit a job in there. I started another new job. And so while all that was happening, my newsletter may hear from me every once in a while because it's like, I'm not even sure what I'm doing. The side hustle kind of had to take a break a couple times because of everything happening in my day job life. Um, and it wasn't until I started one of those jobs. It was about 6 to 9 months in. And I was like, basically, the thought process was my people haven't heard from me in a long time. I'm not sure what I'm doing with the business anymore because I find that like my motivations for my business changed as kind of my career started to change. And so then it's like, I'm not really sure what I want to do with it yet, but I know that I still want to provide value and help people. Um, and so I started, it was kind of like a series of things kind of came together all at once. I had seen this whole like curated newsletter thing done by a couple of people, which I thought was really cool. I had jumped on this $49 lifetime subscription to this review service because it was a deal in this lifetime. So why not? Because I'm like, oh, maybe this could be cool. This could be useful to me at some point. And then it was like, I want to do something for my people. What can I do for my people? And, somehow like all of that kind of converged. And then I had the idea, well, how about I just do a curated newsletter? And I could just, I'm curating anyways, because I'm always sharing stuff on social media anyways. It's kind of part of my system. Nothing that I really think about, I just do it. So it's like, how about I just make it more of a, make it a formatted newsletter, kind of like some that I had seen at that point. And I could do 5 things every week. I think I started out with 5 things, and then see how it goes. And it's like, if I can do this every week, then that would be great. And so JessPicks came, I'm not sure where JessPicks came from, but I used it like once or twice in the past and it just kind of stuck. Um, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to call it Just Picks because it's like my picks for the week, right? Okay. And so this was, I think it was July, I think I want to say July 2016. And yeah, and then I sent out the first email list. So I basically took those 250-ish subscribers from MailChimp, brought them over to review, um, and then kind of said, hey, this is what's going to be the thing. I'm just going to round up the best articles I found this week. And that'll be the thing going forward. And that was essentially kind of my intro. And I had included a few articles at the time. One was on side hustles, of course. And yeah, so that's pretty much how it started.
That's awesome. And so as you were,
Yeah.
as there's a lot to take in there, and I'm trying to sort through it. But when you sat down and I think there's a couple things in there that I think are really cool to call out. The first one is you started creating your email list before you really knew where it was going to end up in the future, right? It was
Yes.
a piece of advice you'd received, and you just kind of got started. And I think that there's this big resistance that happens a lot when we get advice online, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
we go, yes, I know I need to do that. But then we hear 10 other pieces of advice. And we're like, I need to do that
Yes.
too, and that too, and start
Mm-hmm.
a Facebook group and and all of a sudden you're overwhelmed by the sheer number of things. And each thing has about a dozen other things that go along with it. So how did,
Absolutely.
what was there something about newsletters that really caught you, or were there other things that you tried that you kind of let go by the wayside as well?
The thing about newsletters or just I guess your email list, I think it's something you own, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's social media, but social media can change on a dime. And the followers can be gone. You know, you've heard stories about people losing all their followers in like a day because some algorithm changed. So I think for me, it was like, okay, you have to build an email list because these are people that want to hear from you. They've said they want to hear from you, and it's something that you own. And I think that's why it was important to me to focus on that, even in the beginning, right? Like, it's like, I don't know what to send them except my blog at the time. I was blogging a little bit more regularly back then, so it made sense. But it's like, I want to build this list of people who are interested in what I have to say, who basically said, yes, email me, tell me all the things.
Awesome. And when you started blogging, let's go even further back. What
Sure.
inspired you to start blogging in the first place?
So my background is in the network engineering world. So kind of hardcore tech person here. But what I realized is, I guess I've always had this idea that I would start a business, but I never knew what to do. And in actually in 2011, when I started my blog, I went to this conference for women entrepreneurs and women who wanted to be entrepreneurs. Um, and it was, first of all, if you get in a room with other women, I know you don't quite understand, but if you get in a room with other women, it is amazing. It's just like, just all this great energy, great juju, like all the things. And I was like, well, I don't have an idea, but maybe I'll be inspired. I was feeling really burnt out with my job and just like looking for some inspiration. And we spent a lot of time at the conference talking about social media and using it for business. This was 2011, so it was kind of a novel concept back then. And so there were these women who were just so intimidated by creating a Facebook page. Like, they're just like, I couldn't possibly do that. That's too technical for me. And it was so surprising to me, probably because I had a tech background. I'm just like, oh, you just do this and this and this. And it's like not that hard. And I found myself doing that quite a lot, and just basically sharing the things that I knew about like Facebook and Twitter and all this kind of stuff. And one of the women said, you should do a class on this. I'm like, what? A class on social media? You know how sometimes it's like you feel like you have to be an expert to teach something. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm definitely not a social media expert. But after going to that conference, after kind of having a few of those conversations and sitting with it, I'm just like, well, I know things that can help these women. So let me start sharing what I know. And then that became the Tech Biz Girl blog. And that's how it started.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's funny that whole teaching thing. It's, I heard this great quote. I think my dad may have said it years ago, but it's like he was going to teach a class, and I believe my mom was like, "Well, what do you know about that?" And he's like, "Well, I know more than that," and that's all I
And
need
that's
to know.
all
Yeah, and
exactly.
and that
That's
level
perfect.
of confidence is always hilarious to me, and I think there's as we look at how all this stuff sort of comes together and pieces together over time. I think it's cool that you put this newsletter, or you had the email list to start with, and then you
Hmm.
evolved it into a newsletter.
Hmm.
And you were going through a lot of transitions, you said, at the time too, career transitions,
Yes.
life transitions. And one of the things that I think is so great about side hustles and the work that you do, and about creating an email list for yourself, is it gives you something to come back to that's not
Yes.
tied to your job, right? So often
Yes.
I see, people will be, working at a place. I talked to someone earlier today. She was in a job for 20 years and was let go, and now she has to reinvent
Hmm.
everything from scratch. And your company almost gives you your reputation, your identity, and it's your security, your financial everything. So people will
Hmm.
leave that job, get laid off, or go through a quit or a transition, and suddenly they've just got this vast emptiness of a day to fill. And
Yes.
in your case, you at least had things to go back to work on your own
Hmm.
projects to keep you centered. So when did that, was that strategic? Was that just, oh, hey, look, this all just kind of happened out to work out well? What was your sort of experience of that?
Well, as somebody who your earlier conversation spurred something in me because I had worked at a company for 15 years and I got laid off. And I totally get the whole sense of identity all wrapped up in the job. And I was kind of like, oh my God, this is insane. Um, but to answer your question, when I started my blog and my side hustle, I was, like I said, I was on a client account. I was very burnout and I was like, oh God, there has to be more to life than this, that ultimate question. And when I started blogging, like I just had this renewed sense of energy, right? Like the day job didn't seem so bad. And, I could go home and stay up till midnight. And it's weird how sometimes it's like, how do you find energy to work on a side hustle? It actually gives you energy, right? Like if you're passionate about it, all that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, I just kind of started it and I built it from there and it was great for my just overall me-ness, right? And actually I was at that job when I started it. So when I was laid off, which was probably a couple years after I started my side hustle, yeah, my confidence, my identity, like all that stuff took a hit. However, I still had side hustle stuff to do, and that did keep me centered. And it did make me a little money too, right? It made me a little money. It kept me centered. It gave me something to do, so I wasn't like wallowing in self despair. Um, after the layoff. Layoffs really screw with your head, I have to say. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it definitely kept me grounded and kept me sane and gave me something to do. And um, while I was looking for what was next. So it just kind of worked out, right? It wasn't strategic or anything, it worked out. But I think going through that experience and having the side hustle there just kind of made me realize that like it's always good to have more than one stream of income because you never know what's going to happen. So it's always good to have multiple streams, whether that's a side hustle, whether that's, real estate, whether, whatever that is, just to have more than one stream of income.